Now, whilst businesses and the public grapple with the practicalities of pandemic restrictions, the political fallout continues. 2 weeks ago, the DUP triggered a cross-community vote to effectively veto proposals to extend restrictions. Fast forward a week and the party's leader, Arlene Foster, had to deny performing a U-turn when agreement was reached last Thursday to extend restrictions. Now, the Sinn Féin Finance Minister, Conor Murphy, was involved in a pointed exchange with the DUP MLA this week, and he claims the party is at war with itself, and I spoke to him at Stormont.
We're operating a five-party executive, and that's difficult to manage because everybody has different perspectives on all of these things. We're in the middle of a pandemic where lives are being threatened, where we're told that some decision makings are going to cost lives in the short term, other decisions are going to cost more lives in the long term. Those are all incredibly difficult choices for executive ministers. That's what we're here for. But when one of the parties in the executive, one of the largest parties in the executive, is at war with itself publicly, well, that makes it all the more difficult because we're trying to get five parties to agree a certain course of action to follow the health and the medical advice to try and support the economy from the damage that's caused, and yet we have one party clearly at war with itself. That's not helpful to the rest of us.
But is that not overstating it a little bit, at war with itself? He has a difference of opinion on the lockdown.
Well, he's one person with a difference of opinion. He's not on his own. We've heard some of their MPs, as you referred to. I'm standing in the chamber. That's every single week I get up to speak about support for people in this pandemic. DUP members are clearly attacking the position of the executive. That's not helpful to their party leaders. But it's not helpful to the executive because it is difficult to manage a five-party coalition, but one of the parties is completely dysfunctional in terms of an approach to this, then that makes it all the more difficult.
So that's Conor Murphy, the Sinn Féin Finance Minister, and the he was talking about there is Edwin Poots, the DUP Agriculture Minister. So what's going on internally within the party and what impact is it having on the party leader? Let's discuss this with former DUP Special Advisor Tim Cairns and Nelson McCausland, who of course was an Executive Minister for the DUP. Welcome both to Good Morning Ulster. Tim Cairns, what is going on within the DUP?
Well, I think Conor Murphy's forgotten that there was an actual leadership bid within Sinn Féin where Michelle O'Neill was actually challenged. So are Sinn Féin at war with themselves? I think it's perfectly natural and perfectly normal that within political parties there is dissent. Now, I think it is interesting to compare Arlene Foster with her predecessors, and what's clear when you compare her to Ian Paisley, when you compare her to Peter Robinson, the kind of party discipline that they instilled within the party isn't evident during Arlene Foster's leadership, and I think that is noteworthy in and of itself. However, I think there's not many political leaders across the UK who did instill the discipline within their party that particularly Peter Robinson managed to instill within DUP MLAs during his leadership time. So most political leaders across the United Kingdom would love to have had the party discipline that Peter Robinson was able to have. And I think maybe what we're seeing is a more normalised DUP where there is some dissent. But I do think that where we see a slight weakness in Arlene Foster, I think it's something she needs to address, is she has never at any point in her leadership disciplined anybody for stepping out of line. I think maybe Jim Wells is the only person who's maybe had the whip removed from him. But, we've seen things that MPs have done. We've seen things that MLAs have said publicly that have been challenges to her. And we haven't seen any discipline of those members from Arlene Foster. And if there was to be a criticism of her and there was to be a weakness, I think it's that. She doesn't follow through with discipline.
She stopped holding joint press briefings with Michelle O'Neill for something like 73 days over the summer because of what happened at the Bobby Story funeral, which she said affected the messaging from the executive. And yet, it's a very different thing, of course, but does what Edwin Poots has been doing, even over the past weekend, does what Sammy Wilson has been continually doing not also affect the messaging? And if she's going to be consistent, shouldn't she tackle those problems within her own party?
Well, I don't think what Edwin Poots or Sammy Wilson has said is affecting the messaging. I think it's quite right that in the political sphere, no, it's absolutely not. But in the political sphere, I think people should be allowed to dissent and put forward dissenting views. That doesn't mean that people aren't going to comply with the rules or people aren't going to do what they're being told to do. I think it's entirely different. And I think it's comparing, chalk and cheese to say, actually going out and actually breaching the rules is the same as someone saying, well, actually, I think there might be a better way of handling this pandemic. I think there might be a better way of dealing with the public. I think those two things, Gareth, with respect, just can't be compared at all.
Nelson McCausland, you know the party from the inside very well. You've been a party member, or you were a party member for a very long time. Are you concerned about what you see happening now?
Well, I think Timothy Cairns made a very strong point there when he spoke about different styles of leadership. The party was set up almost 50 years ago next year, and for a large part of that time, Ian Paisley, with Peter Robinson beside him, ran the party in a particular way. You then had that sustained period with Peter Robinson at the helm. And the truth of the matter is, and Timothy referred to this, but also with Peter Robinson, you had a unique mind, which none of the others that I can see in other political parties have, a very incisive, analytical mind. And the result was that I don't think within the party you saw the development of the strong internal structures that build up that advice-giving, decision-making role that other parties might have. I can recall being at meetings with members of Sinn Féin at the time of the welfare reform issue. And it was clear then that you might find an agreement with Martin McGuinness, but he would have to go back and then discuss that with people at party headquarters, talk the thing through, and he could sometimes come back and change his mind and say, no, it wasn't acceptable. That's something that you see in political parties. So differences of opinion, I think, are normal. I think that the comment there from the finance minister in regard to a party at war is ridiculous. I saw far more disagreements in some other parties at that time than I would see within the DUP. But I do think there is an issue there about a need with the leadership of Arlene Foster's a need, I think, at this time now, an opportunity to build up that advice-giving and decision-making structure within the party. The internal structure, I think, is an area where there is room for improvement. And that means recognising the issue, analysing it, and then organising to accommodate that. And then you're in a better, more resilient position to deal with differences of opinion and dissent. And we are seeing differences of opinion.
Peter Robinson... Sorry, Nelson. Peter Robinson, obviously, he had his problems as well, mind you. I'm thinking particularly over the maze.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And that's something that happens in all political parties. Generally, in the case of Sinn Féin, people just resign and go off into the wilderness because there's no toleration of dissent in public there. But within other parties, you're seeing there Steve Baker and the Libertarian wing within the Conservative Party expressing their differences at Westminster. This is the normal political life. And we shouldn't be surprised about that. But a party needs to get itself into a position where it has that strength internally and that resilience to accommodate that, to deal with it, to bounce ideas around and then come to a consensus. I think because of the previous leadership styles over those years, we maybe didn't see the same development within the DUP.
Tim Cairns, do you think any of this is about people positioning themselves perhaps down the line, maybe not that far down the line, to challenge Arlene Foster's leadership?
Well, I think for a political leader, the day you assume office is the first day that people are probably plotting for your downfall. I think that's common in any political party anywhere in the world. And look, I mean, people are always positioning themselves. I mean, once you're leader of a party, there's always people who are going to feel slighted. There's always people who feel they should have been promoted. There's always people who are going to feel that they should be in positions that they've not been promoted to. And those people are going to be disgruntled. Look, here's the ultimate question. And this is the ultimate question for MLAs and MPs in the DUP. May 2020 is the Assembly election, and MLAs will ask themselves the question, are their electoral prospects better with Arlene Foster as the leader or with somebody else as the leader? And if we get into the spring, coming into the summer next year, and people are thinking, my electoral prospects are better with someone else's leader of the party, then a move will inevitably be made. But while people, and a majority of the MLAs and a majority of the MPs, and I think that's where they sit at the moment, feel that their electoral prospects are better with Arlene Foster will remain leader. Okay. And whoever is the leader of whatever party, there's always many grumblers, there's always going to be people who think they can do better, but until that question's answered, Arlene Foster's going to be leader of the DUP.
Okay, May 2022, I hope you mean both Arlene Foster and I hope you mean that, but anyway.
I did mean 2020. What did I say?
2020, I think. But anyway.
Oh, sorry. I meant 2022. Yeah.
Okay, let's not panic yet. Okay, so we've got to leave it there. Interesting subject. We will return to it. Tim Cairns and Nelson McCausland, thanks for speaking to us.